It's just so serene out there, you know, on the water, moving your line up and down, up and down. All of a sudden, BAM!
That generation, you never hear them complain or anything.
All Japanese within the coastal area should move inland.
Just to uproot and leave everything. Can only take what you got in a suitcase.
President Roosevelt refuses to even touch a Jap flag.
There's a lot of history that hasn't been exposed. It's been depressed, it's been pushed down. It's starting to rise.
Throughout my life, there were opportunities to learn about my heritage and my past and my family that I overlooked. But all I cared about was being on the water and fishing. Being out here was my life. And then I looked up, and it was my career. It happened really naturally. But for fishermen in my family who came before me, it was not so easy.
With Lucifer bashful and hiding his face.
Growing up in rural Montana, my mom looked different for sure. And I kind of looked different. People were always asking me what I was. And I'd say, I'm half Japanese. But I didn't really know what that meant. We didn't have a lot of Japanese culture in my house. We did have this one old chest under the stairs, and it was filled with family heirlooms, and I would put them on and I would pretend to be a character from my Japanese fairy tale book, but it didn't seem connected to me. My mom grew up in downtown Seattle, and her parents didn't speak Japanese at home. So ultimately, that culture and history was not passed on from generation to generation. It seemed like my mom was as removed from it as I was. It wasn't until I became a mom and my two daughters started to grow up that I became more curious about my family's past. I wanted to know more about who I am. And I had this one link back to Seattle, back to Japan. My mom's cousin, Masaru Tahara. And Moss, like me, loved to fish.
We just concluded our 44th Tengu blackmouth salmon derby, and well, it was slightly better than last year. Last year, of course, was the worst year ever.
Well, this is Seattle, you know, cloudy days, rainy days.
I need the sun. If the sun comes out tomorrow, I'll dance.
Well, Tengu Club is a group of people who fish for salmon in Seattle's Elliott Bay in the wintertime. The name derived from Tengu, which is a mythical creature in Japanese folklore. It is very popular in Japan.
The Tengu goblin has a nose that grows when it lies, and so it's just perfect for fishermen because they lie about how many fish they catch, they lie about how big the fish are, they lie about their favorite spots. Fishermen are liars. The end.
Oh, that's not good. Don't follow us. No, okay, we'll follow you.
Fishermen love to fish, love to catch fish, and not only that, they tell other people their fish story.
This is a true story.
There was
87 people, I think, that didn't catch any fish.
There was a lot of liars in the Tengu Club.
Weighed 420 pounds.
Had all kinds of spines going.
And how they fought the fish.
My knees were trembling.
It was kind of choppy out there.
Because if you get lost, you die.
And I've got the net ready. All of a sudden, bam! Sea lion.
Masaru set a record in the Tengu Club for conservation. He hadn't caught a fish in, I think, 9 years.
See, I used to drink heavily, and the problem is that I look like Doug now.
And these are honest people. These are honest people who have never told a lie in their life.
Okay, bye-bye. So I know they are never liars. They don't lie. They just exaggerate a little bit. Here's a fish. Ooh. Oh. Heavy, heavy. Comes a fish. Ooh.
People call him Mr. Tengu because he's been the heart of the club since the early days. And he's the club historian. He had all these notebooks, posters, and photographs going back to the 1920s. The Tengu Club is the oldest salmon fishing club on the West Coast.
For Issei, the first generation Japanese who came to Seattle, fishing was an important part of their culture. They came from fishing villages in Japan, and when they came to Seattle, fishing was still a major part of their lifestyle.
In those days, the Japanese were mostly farmers or fishermen. The only thing that was available to them was a piece of lead, a line, and maybe a bamboo stick. That was their food.
It was a real element of the Asian community back then. Pike Place Market, throwing the salmon back and forth. That's started from a Japanese fishmonger.
My grandfather was considered one of the community leaders. Before World War II, he sold Japanese magazines and fishing tackle. That's why you'll see in a couple, he's right there, my grandfather's right there. Fishermen love to talk about fishing, and that was a great place to kind of gather the fishermen and talk about it. And I'm pretty sure that's how the Tengu started. You know, they are big on salmon fishing.
Back in the day, there were a lot of boats out there in Elliott Bay.
Back then, fishing derbies were a big deal in the summertime, when the king salmon were running in Puget Sound.
The problem was the Japanese fishermen just kept winning, and the white fishermen started to get resentful.
That's where the word mooching comes in.
It's probably the most simplest kind of fishing you can do.
To fish with a rod, reel, herring, and a sinker, and that was it.
Moving your line up and down, up and down.
The Caucasians are sort of begging for information, what kind of setup you have.
The Japanese were all fishing with herring, and the guys, they was catching fish, and the guys was fishing with spoons. They wasn't catching that many, so they'd go bum a herring from the Japanese guys.
In the beginning, I just wanted to go fishing. I wanted to learn about mooching, this technique that Japanese Americans created in Elliott Bay. Then I started to dive in, and I realized, whoa, this is real American history.
I mean, this is literally where the derby happens. It's pretty brutal out there.
That was never really talked about where I grew up.
I can't tell if it's Grandpa or...
Oh, wow, that's a pretty one.
Who's that, do you think? I don't know.
I don't have a lot of time. I've already lost my grandfather and my grandmother, and my mom really can't tell me anymore because she doesn't know anything else.
There were tournaments that were offered up. The Japanese Americans were not allowed to be in those tournaments. They were excluded. There was a determination for them to say, hey, let's start our own tournament.
So in 1937, they started their own fishing derby. And it was held in the dead of winter when no one else wanted to be on the water. It was the only time that they could get boats rented to them. And the only fish that were still hanging around were the smaller blackmouth salmon.
Tengu, it's always been an organization that's been welcoming, whether you're your race, color, creed. If you can fish and you're a good person, you're welcome.
Out of my 4 trips, I caught 1 legal salmon, and it wasn't a blackmouth.
Shigatanai is when things get really tough, and it's like, we could kind of cave in, or we could, just get up our gumption and move forward. And so Shigatanai is like, well, it can't be helped, so stop complaining and let's move forward.
December 7th, 1941, that day was the last Tengu fishing day.
My dad, that Sunday, he was out fishing. He's coming home. And he wondered, why was everybody giving him, real weird look and kind of like funny stare. And he realized when he found out after the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
I ask the Congress declare a state of war between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
In an instant, everything changed for Japanese Americans. These were U.S. citizens whose country had turned against them. Overnight, discrimination became outright hatred.
Pearl Harbor happened, right? But that discrimination was out there before then, right? That's why back early in the 1930s, Asian businesses, even Chinese too, they had to show that they were Americans, right? Now, what is an American? What was an American back then? We always thought that somebody that was born on American soil, U.S. soil. But back then, there was a different definition of what an American was. A white person looks at somebody dark-skinned or different eye shape and everything, and to them, back then, they were not Americans.
So there's the Panama. Oh, yeah. Maneki.
This is Higo's, and we used to shop here.
We gotta make the ferry.
When the FBI came, they took him. No warning, nothing. They took him. There was this one guy. He was pointing out all the community leaders.
Just prior to that, my dad told me that he had just bought tackle, rods, and they got the news that they had to close up. He had to liquidate everything, and you only got a short time to do it. So a lot of it was just kind of had to be just left there. And I think, from what I understand, the government took over the building, and probably the merchandise too.
Under 20,000 or something like that, the Japanese Americans were rounded up and sent to those camps.
My dad, he would have been around 30 years old, which when I think about when I was 30, I mean, that must have been really tough, and he never really talked about camp.
So your parents, they were given 6 days.
Yep.
So they had 6 days to figure out what to do with their property?
I was probably, 3 years old when I went to camp. And my sister was born in camp. First, we went to, where the Puyallup Fair is. They call that Camp Harmony.
What are the other ones?
I don't know. They're not labeled.
Puyallup is where the first staging area was for the internment camps. They went to Puyallup first, and then they got sent to different camps. And so they stayed in the animal stalls. Yeah, they were given rakes to rake out the shit.
Oh my gosh.
Time comes by, we're shipped to go to Idaho, and it was just a plain desert. All you saw was a fenced-in area with barbed wire, and then they had these on the corners, those big high stacks where a guy would be up there with a machine gun or whatever. And I don't know what that was all about, but they thought we were gonna try to break out or something.
All night.
The searchlight. What are they? For what?
And where are you gonna go? You're in the middle of nowhere.
Mother, father, and the children in jail. Crazy. Signed by a president.
Were Grandpa and Grandma in the same camp?
No, my mom was in Tule Lake and Grandpa was in Minidoka.
Okay.
I think in a way the men wanted to prove their loyalty that we are American citizens, okay? We will fight for America.
Majority of people that were interned in these camps were U.S. citizens.
So for Grandpa, he went to camp before being drafted and everything, right?
Right. Well, he wasn't drafted, he enlisted.
He was meant to go to University of Washington, and then the war broke out, and
so he never did.
Did he ever talk about what it was like when they came back?
No, not a lot. Except that everything that they stored in the basement was still there.
My grandparents on both sides went to intern camps, came back, and they had to start all over again because they lost their houses, cars, land, all that stuff.
Was there actually looting going on that?
Oh yeah.
Really?
A lot.
Losing your identity like that, just having your property just taken away from you. And on top of that, you didn't know if you were going to have that property when you came back.
After camp, we didn't have any money. We moved to Nebraska. My dad worked some of the beet fields over there for a couple years. And he finally got enough money to buy a car to come back to Seattle. My dad woke us up and he says, I want you to look at this. You're coming into Seattle now. You're gonna go into a tunnel and then you're gonna come out the other side, and that's gonna be Seattle. And I'm really glad that he woke us up because it was really beautiful.
They were no longer the leader of their family anymore. That was kind of ripped apart from them. And so their self-esteem went way down. There were suicides that happened because of those kind of feelings.
It's maybe hard for some folks to grasp how cruel your own country can be.
And then what?
And then he finished the war in Army intelligence. And then when he got out, and he was offered, if he enlisted again in the Army, he was offered an officership. And so he went in his dress uniform into the recruiting station, and the fellow at the desk said, "Hey, Jap, what do you want?" And Grandpa said, "Nothing from you." He turned around and walked away.
Wow.
Dad never talked about Minidoka. That was a noble thing. With blackout curtains drawn, the train left Puyallup and climbed the Cascade Mountains until the land flattened and the inescapable sun transformed the train into a moving sauna. Shikata ganai. It can't be helped. The train stopped by the side of an unmarked road in the Idaho desert, released its passengers miles from any station. Rumors spread they would be shot or marched to death, their bodies stacked, then carried to some awaiting ditch. Nowhere to run, they walk in their best shoes in the gritty sand as they carried all that they could. 3 years later, Dad returned to Seattle after the war. Dad never talked about it. Shikata ganai, my best friend mother, chose pills for suicide. My neighbor opened the garage door and found his father in a black suit, his best hanged by the neck. Shikata ganai. We, however, never talked about it. That was the noble thing to do.
One thing great about fishing is you're focused on just fishing, right? The peacefulness of the water.
You take any fisherman and you take his pole away for 3 years. Oh my. That's probably the first thing they're thinking. The first thing I'm gonna do is go salmon fishing when I get back to, home. I'm sure they were all saying the same thing.
November of 1946, they restarted Tengu Club. Right after they came out of the camp with almost nothing in their position, they came out to fish. 172 people.
It is amazing as people had come back from internment that a lot of people still didn't have a place to stay anymore, and a lot of things were gone. So for some people to just say, well, this is the opportunity, let's go fishing. Yeah.
This is about the time when we used to bring the kids out here, they all go, "Oh, it's cold out here, we want to go inside.
Let's have a cup ramen." I hope the hot water is still hot.
Okay, we got the skunk off.
This was a bad year for me. I just got one silver, no black top.
It's not mine this year.
There's a lot of money flying around here and I have no guarantees. And hopefully I won't be washing dishes tonight.
It's still during the harshest conditions of the year, but we still do it because it is a remembrance of what Japanese American have been through. That's the testament of the Tengu.
There's fun and then there's misery.
Come on, fill up. Go on? Yeah. Got him. Okay, good time in it. Woo! Is it,
Yeah, there we go.
But everybody knows how hard that had to be to lose everything. For them to come back and rebuild their lives and become successful, that's the true story of, what happened after internment.
You can say Shigataganai, it can't be helped. But it's not like it goes away. The truth is still there, and we can learn from it if we don't bury it. My grandparents were born in the United States and were as apple pie and baseball as it comes. They wanted to be accepted by their country and live the American dream, so they assimilated to protect their family. Their generation became Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. They drove Ford cars. They named their kids after U.S. presidents. They put on a suit and a smile, and they worked their asses off.
First, like 30, 40 feet, just kind of hand pull out the line nice and slow. And then once you get down 30 or 40, then just light pressure with your thumb. And then once you get that constant pressure, then reel, and then set.
Okay.
Yeah, be good.
To see someone catch a fish for their first time, and I taught them like the technique of mooching.
It's a technique that has been a tradition in our families, and to carry it on does carry a lot more weight.
Your families must be very proud.
We hope we're making them proud.
Yeah.
It's maddening to think like, okay, this is a key point in history, and how are we not talking more about it? How is it that I am half Japanese? I went through all my elementary school and high school and college, and I somehow missed all of this. And then I ask around, and it seems like a lot of other people didn't learn about it either. It's on our generation to pass on this history, this heritage, which our parents and their parents weren't able to pass on to us.
They were embarrassed, and they didn't want to talk about it. And they wouldn't talk about camp until we were quite a bit older. I talked to a lot of people who said, my parents don't want to talk about it. I never went to Puyallup Fair when I was younger because they didn't want to go.
You can't be in it for the money. Money's not that good. The fishing's not that good. The weather is terrible, and prizes aren't huge. Why do it? Why did you all stick in it?
Why do it? I don't know. I don't know that. Tengu is a people, okay? And people who come year after year, and mostly not catching fish, but still, they just keep coming.
You have to go fishing in order to catch fish.
Get out no matter what, suck it up and persevere, right? Honor your ancestors.
I have one more actually. I have something for Hilary.
For me?
For you, yes. It's
Thank you so
It's a little Tengu.
Thank you.
My favorite memories, like I say, is seeing all those boats out there, And I'm worried, a lot of people look at, they see them and what are those crazy people doing out there, right? They don't understand what that derby is. It's a joining of minds and bodies, and if you don't get it, you come in and you just cheer on the one that did get it. That's what that is, tradition.
I was kind of thinking we'd make this a tradition.
Mom, it's cold out here. Let's go home.
I can't.
There's a sunshine, there's a sunshine, a sun shining. Now, Doug! There's a sunshine, there's a sunshine, a sun shining. Now, the film crew!